Hello, my darlings. How are you? I hope you're well. It is now November, which means October is gone, if you didn't already know. And I want to jump on here and tell you guys what I read during October and what I plan to get to during November. Read 6 books this month, and it was a really good reading month, to be honest, in terms of how much I enjoyed and how much I thought about what I was reading. Everything really just hit me except one book. There was one book which I didn't really like, but we're not going to give it much time. But anyways, yeah, I'm just going to jump into it. I'll give you my TBR as well for November, although I won't stick to it most likely, because every time I do a TBR, it's stupid because I am literally such a mood reader and I change like the wind constantly. So anywho's, the first book that I read during what month? October, was Claire Keegan's Foster, and I loved this book. This book is so short, but it is perfect. This was published quite a long time ago. I think it was published in the early 2000s or like 2011 maybe. No, 2010 it was published, if I'm correct. And this is an Irish novel which follows a young Irish girl who is sent to live with distant relatives for the summer after her extremely impoverished family having another child which they can't afford. So she's sent to live with these people who she doesn't really know, and you feel really, really bad for her, because imagine being young and just dropped into a foreign situation. And yeah, it's really impactful, and it's really, really short, but Claire Keegan's masterful with the pen, and she's so economical with her words. Every word that's there really matters. And my dad read this also, and he's not a large reader, but this devastated him to his core. He loved this book and he won't shut up about it. So take it here. Great Grandpa's Book Club liked this, so read it. Yeah, I feel like I don't want to give too much away. It's really short. You can read it in one sitting, which I think is the best way to do it. But the prose is magnificent. And I think one central theme I want to talk about this is that it's full of inevitability. Like, you know the book will end. We know that summer will come to the end, and our protagonist knows that too. We know that at some point she's going to have to leave this place, and what leaving this place looks for is unknown. For her is unknown, and it's really scary. So yeah, I really liked that, and you can feel that like sense of inevitability in this book. Like, it's just within its pages, it feels like that. I then read The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson, and I have been wanting to read this for so long, and so when I got my hands on it, I read it fairly quickly. If you don't know who Maggie Nelson is, they are like a gender and queer theorist, and this is that, pretty much. This is a memoir, and it's genre bending for sure. It is very intriguing in its format. I'll show you here. Most of you have probably read this. Books just fell everywhere. But it's like a series of passages, and it's almost written as a diary to her partner, who is queer and gender fluid. But this book grapples with some such massive and like complex topics, like such as motherhood, feminism, queerness, what it means to be a writer and an artist, motherhood and that choice, and what that adventure looks like, and entering that as a partnership or isolated. And yeah, it was such big brain energy, and I found that like I had to reread passages, but I literally underlined like every second page in this book, and this is one of my favorite books I've ever read, and I feel like this has made me a better thinker, a more critical thinker and reader, and I felt myself thinking about everything I read a little bit more since reading The Argonauts, and I can't wait to read everything Maggie Nelson's written. I also listened to a really great podcast between her and Olivia, I can't remember her last name, but it's like a London bookshop review bookshop podcast on Spotify when this was released. So it talks a lot about this. So it goes for like an hour and a half. Definitely listen to that, because it makes this hit even more. And I'm obsessed. I feel like this month has just been so bookish, and I'm loving it. I'm loving this community, and I'm just so excited. But yeah, The Argonauts, I loved it. Slay. Then what did I read? I then read The Brink by Holden Shepherd, which I've talked about. I don't want to talk about it too much. I didn't like it. For anyone who missed that, it was a book club pick for Grandpa's Book Club. The link is downstairs. Shameless plug. But yeah, I didn't like it. It's about a group of school leavers in Australia who embark on this destination. It's like a celebration for the end of year 12, and it's labeled as a queer novel. It's not that. I've talked about how having one queer character or two queer characters, two gay characters, doesn't make your novel a queer nugget, like a gold nugget for queer youth. That really pissed me off. But yeah, I just thought it was very immature. It was YA, but it just really missed the mark. Don't try and grapple with extreme topics and complex topics if you're not gonna at least try to execute it properly. It was just not sure of itself. There was so many things I didn't like about it, so I don't want to ramble on about it because I'm not really recommending it. So yeah, I read that. I read The Brink. Book Club's consensus was very similar to mine. I then read Strager, and Strager, I know quite a few of you on here have read it. I needed something on my Kindle after The Brink because I just needed to tap away at some pages, which was horrible because I bought all these books, but I just felt like reading on my Kindle. I'd been seeing heaps of people reading on their Kindles, so I just felt like I was missing out. So I got Strager. Ben recommended me Strager, and I really enjoyed it. It's about like a group of 9 young women who are sent away to work at this alpine hotel, but there's never any guests, and it's really eerie, really creepy, but the prose is really beautiful, and it has a sense of like nostalgia to it. And the weather here was like really drizzly and gloomy, even though it's spring and it should be getting hot. But it really just matched Strager's vibe, so I wasn't that mad about it being sort of shitty weather, because it matched the book vibes. So it worked for me, and I really enjoyed it. And it was like sort of spooky for October, even though Halloween's not really a thing here. But yeah, I read that, really enjoyed it. It was like a good palate cleanser almost, and it did take me a while to read because I feel like the tension at some points, that was my only gripe, the tension like dissipated, and then the plot waned a bit, and it lost my interest at certain points. So it did take me like a week to finish, even though it's like 170 pages, which is a bit excessive to take that long to finish it for me. But yeah, anywho's, I then got approved for an arc of The Alphabetical Diaries by Sheila Heti by NetGalley, and this is a novel that's coming out, or a piece of non-fiction work coming out in February, if I'm correct, published with Fitzcarraldo. That edition will be exquisite. I will be picking it up, and I loved The Alphabetical Diaries. It was my first Heti, which I'm really upset that I haven't read more Heti now, and I really need to get to all of her other works. But The Alphabetical Diaries is pretty much bits of her diary that have been taken from the past however many years and collated and curated, and then alphabetized. So for example, there's each passage, every sentence will start with the same letter. And I think this was very impactful. The repetition really packed a punch because you got to see all these similar things that were happening throughout her diaries, even though they weren't related at all and they were probably happening over years. And so you see all these veins of her life and how they mesh together, and things that she used all the time and things that she experienced a lot. And yeah, it was very intriguing, and I think it really told me that I am doing the right thing by doing my morning pages, which this morning I didn't do, which that reminds me, I'll need to do that tonight. But anywho's, I really love The Alphabetical Diaries, and I really need to read more Sheila Heti. But the thing is, the covers in Australia of the Sheila Heti is disgusting. So I don't know, I might need some of my US friends or wherever the covers are a bit more palatable to help me out in getting those, because I want to have physical copies of them. I really don't like reading on my Kindle for the fact that I like things, and reading on my Kindle doesn't really give me more tangible books, and I love books. Don't we all love collecting books? I have a book buying addiction, so reading on my Kindle isn't as fun in terms of like the paying for it or getting a book and then not getting something to see out of it. So yeah, the pure color variation cover here in Australia is disgusting. Vomit. It's the fuggliest thing I've ever seen, so I will not be picking it up unless I can get a US edition. I think the US edition is nicer. I don't know. I'm gonna put a cover of the other covers here in Australia. They're not good. But Fitzcarraldo with this one, thank God for that. Then I read Blueberries. I read Blueberries with Nathan's Nook. I love you, baby. We had so much fun doing this buddy read. We conversed so much. This is by Elena Savage. And yeah, we were just sending voice notes. It was my first ever buddy read. And I just had so much fun doing it. I feel like I really thought about what I was reading and like made notes on it. And as I said, since the Argonauts, it's really interesting to see how I've been thinking about what I'm reading and talking to people more about it and just trying to grapple with topics that I am learning about. So yeah, Blueberries is like a genre-bending memoir. Again, it's like a group of essays in all these different formats, some of which work, some of which don't. For me personally, I found a few of them to be a bit difficult to read and could have been better, but the content within them was like still good. What is this? This is so many things. This provides such an interesting commentary on violence, on manipulation and the illusion of choice, of power, of what it means to be a writer moving through life in your early stages, on privilege, on motherhood, on so many things. And so many amazing writers are mentioned in here. Both Maggie Nelson and Sheila Heti were mentioned, which Nathan made a really interesting comment about my reading following me, and I feel like I'm just falling into this really good nook, Nathanson, of reading at the moment, and I'm really liking that. And one thing I wanted to talk about was that Blueberries is Australian and The Brink was Australian, and there is such a vast difference. This is a perfect depiction of what living in Australia is like. It felt to me like I was having coffee with a friend and we were just talking about life. Like, living in Australia isn't like a crazy thing. Like, we just live here. It is what it is. Like, we're people like all the same, and I feel like it's hard to find like books that don't over dramatize or sensationalize Australia, both in terms of its culture, society, and both its and it's also its landscape. The Brink was like, "G'day, mate," whereas this was like, we're just talking and having a coffee, and I felt like I was reading a diary or just conversing with a friend, and it was so relatable. I loved it. So Blueberries by Elena Savage, loved it. Chef's Kiss. The Argonauts, loved it. Chef's Kiss. Alphabetical Diaries, loved it. Chef's Kiss. Foster, loved it. Chef's Kiss. Straight Up, really liked it. And then The Brink, didn't like it. Anywho's, they're the books I read during October, and now I'm going to get on to, what month? November. I've put aside 6 books because I feel like 6 books is a sweet spot, although I would really like to try and read some more to try and get my reading like numbers up. I think I've read like 66 books maybe so far, and there's you bitches out there be reading like 100 books, and I wish I could do that, but I just don't think I can. And I read small books as well. But anywho's, I've got 6 books here which I would love to sink my teeth into this month. I think it's a realistic list, and yeah, so we'll talk about that now. The first book I'll talk about is Joan Didion's Blue Nights. I've read 2 Didions. I want to be a Didion completist. I love her. I love her persona. I loved her persona. I love so many things about Joan Didion. Her fashion, she was just an icon. She slayed. Those big glasses, I need a pair. But I really want to read Blue Nights. This is, on a more somber tone, is about her daughter who passed away, and it's about grappling with grief and motherhood and loss and being a writer, and it's Didion. So I feel like we can't complain about that. But I also want to ask, has anyone read what Joan Didion means? Oh, I don't know what it's exactly. The World According to Joan Didion, maybe? I'll put it up on the screen. Has anyone read that? What have you think? What have you thought about it if you've read it? And yeah, because I sort of might check it out, but I feel like I want to read all of Joan Didion first. And if I read this, what's the next best Joan Didion to move on to? I've read Slouching Towards Bethlehem and Play It As It Lays. So give me more recos, please. Then Claire Keegan, so late in this day, I went to the city last weekend, and I didn't actually know this came out, but this was just published. It's beautiful, the cover. It's like a painted cover almost. And Claire Keegan, I read Foster, as I said, and I loved her. I've also, my mum's got me put aside for Christmas, small things like these. So I will be reading a lot of Claire Keegan, but so late in the day, from what I know, I don't really know much about it. I sort of just bought it because it was Claire Keegan, but I think it's about a man who is spiraling about this woman late at night, and it's about the space between men and women and generosity, and yeah, these relationships and how men and women and the space between them is different. So if you guys have read this, let me know what you think. And I think this would be like a good short read to like just top that reading goal up a bit. Next, another shorter one, Things I Don't Want to Know by Deborah Levy. I read August Blue in September, and I really liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I feel like her non-fiction, I know a lot of people who really love it on here, Ben being one of them. Things I Don't Want to Know is the first part of her autobiographical living series. It's on womanhood and writing. And I listened to a podcast with Deborah Levy. I think it's the London Review Bookshop as well podcast, and that was really interesting. She is really funny, actually. So yeah, I love this cover, and I've been wanting to read this for so long. I just haven't been able to get it. Like, none of the bookshops I have been into had it, and now I feel like everywhere I've been has had it since I bought it. But yeah, I bought this like 2 weeks ago, and I cannot wait to read it. I definitely want to read it. And look, the lines are pretty spaced out as well, which is nice. I love short books. And I know I talked about this last month and put it on my October TBR, but I didn't get to it. I just didn't feel like it. So hopefully this month we get to it. This is Carl Geary's Juno Loves Legs. This is apparently like just kids. It's set in Dublin, and it follows 2 adolescents who are like twin flames, but then I guess they're dealing with different things, and yeah, very similar to Just Kids by the sound of it. So this looks really good, and anything with Just Kids vibes and set in Dublin, I'm sold, really. So yeah, and this cover is really nice. I think it's refreshing. The lighting hasn't gone strange. My phone's having a little bit of a conniption. I then want to read, I just want to get to Paradise Rock by Jenny Haval. I think quite a lot of you have read this, and this is sort of about being hypersensual, having a sexual awakening, having a queer awakening, bodies, and apparently it's quite strange and gothic, and it looks really interesting. I don't know, it seems like it might be maybe too strange for me, but I've wanted to read it for like a year and a bit, and I've never seen it, and then I think it's been like like the publisher changed maybe, and now it's like mass produced, so it's easier to get, but I saw it on the weekend and I had to buy it. Seems to be a running trend in my spending habits that I have no self-control, but I hope you enjoy my lack of self-control. And then Bally's is the last one I want to read by Nicola Dinan. This is a book club pick for my book club, Grandpa's Book Club, over on Discord. Link is downstairs, as I said before. But this starts off as a boy meets boy. I've already started this on Spotify, like listening to it. And then it sort of goes into transitioning and what it means when your partner transitions and how that impacts relationships and your own self, and it's international, so it spans so many different countries, which I'm already finding really interesting. So yeah, so there's an array of different books I want to get into, and I've read past month. What have you been reading? What have you been up to? What do you want to read this coming month? And yeah, leave any comments you have downstairs. I can't wait to speak to you guys, and everything to find me is downstairs in the description. My Instagram, my TikTok, my book club. I think that's about it. So yeah, go down there and check it out, and I'll speak to you guys soon. Toodaloo. Thanks for listening. Bye.